Amid the escalating Iran-Israel conflict, Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has granted permission to the Indian Embassy in Tehran to relocate Indian students out of Iran. Now, Indian students will be escorted to Armenia's Norduz border via buses. According to J&K Student Association, the Indian Embassy will begin relocating Indian students, including many from Kashmir, from Iranian city of Armenia to Armenia to ensure their safety. Now, there are around 10,000 Indian citizens in Iran, with approximately 2,000 Indian students as of 2022. An earlier statement from India's Ministry of External Affairs had said that the Indian Embassy in Tehran is continuously monitoring the situation in Iran and students were being relocated to safer places within Iran. And for more on this, we're being joined by our Assistant Editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibbal. Now, Siddhant, what do we know so far? What would these evacuation efforts look like? And also talk to us about the timeline of the efforts.
Well, we know that approximately 3,000 to 4,000 Indian nationals are present in Iran, and over the weekend we saw Indian embassy in Tehran issuing advisories and asking its nationals, especially students, to register with the embassy. Now, essentially, the Indian embassy is now trying to make sure that once these Indians collect at a designated point on buses, they are taken to border with Armenia, and from Armenia they will be brought back to India. We know that Jammu Kashmir Student Association has been very vocal as well. It has written to the Indian Prime Minister as well on the issue. And remember, a large portion of the Indian nationals in Iran are Indian nationals from the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Also, focus is evacuation with the help of or with the facilitation of the UAE government. In fact, the Indian External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, has spoken to both the Foreign Minister of Armenia and United Arab Emirates in last 24 hours over this particular issue, and the focus remains as to how safely the Indian nationals can be evacuated from Iran. Now, remember, this is not the first major evacuation India will be taking. Since 2020, India has been undertaking evacuation and repatriation of Indian nationals, whether it is the 2000 COVID repatriation, the Vande Bharat mission, whether it is the 2001 Afghanistan operation Devi Shakti, under which Indians were brought from Afghanistan. In 2022, in the aftermath of the conflict that started in Ukraine, the war that started in Ukraine, India had brought back Indians from Ukraine, and during that evacuation, a focus was on evacuation of Indian students. Roughly around 20,000 Indian students were evacuated under Operation Ganga. That time, it was followed by operations involving evacuation of Indian nationals from Israel, from Sudan, from Haiti as well. So, in a very precarious world where conflicts have become the norm rather than the exception, we know that the Indian side has geared up to make sure that there can be an early evacuation. Given the size of the Indian diaspora, India has roughly around 33 million Indian diaspora members across the world. Half of them are Indian nationals.
Right, Siddhant, we also know that the focus of the G7 summit this year is now also going to be on the escalating tensions in West Asia. How much influence do you think can the G7 have in escalating this conflict, given the trajectory we're on right now?
Well, the leaders are meeting at a very particular moment when, of course, the conflict in West Asia is widening up. It has been several days now since both sides, Iran and Israel, has traded fire. And essentially both the G7 leaders and, of course, the invited country, that is particularly Ukraine, were hoping that this year's G7 will focus on the conflict in Ukraine, but it's the conflict in West Asia that will dominate. Now, we know that I do expect strong comments coming from the G7 leaders, and how essentially there needs to be de-escalation. But it is finally up to Iran and Israel how to resolve the conflict and how to de-escalate. India, on its part, has been calling for early de-escalation. India has good relationship with both Iran and Israel, and it looks like that this conflict is something that is not only going to impact the region but beyond as well. For India, it has its own stakes, especially when it comes to diaspora. Not only Iran, but India has huge diaspora in West Asia, and approximately 30,000 Indian nationals in Israel. And we also know focus also is on energy. The prices could increase given the fact that India imports a lot of its energy, particularly crude oil and LNG from West Asia. Connectivity could be impacted, whether it's the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, or whether it's the Chabar port where India has invested a lot, or whether it is the maritime trade. An impact on maritime trade means a higher cost of insurance, longer routes, and that impacts the inflationary pressure here in India.
Right. Thanks, Siddharth, for getting us up to speed. And of course, we'll continue to closely monitor the situation in West Asia.